the most important thing we can do as relates to China is making sure that America is going faster. The genie is so far out of the bottle in China as it relates to their innovation ecosystem. That DeepSeek new AI open source app that was the #1 downloadable app on Apple yesterday that caused the largest drop in market cap history on the equity markets yesterday when NVIDIA stock dropped over $500 billion in market cap, never before seen by an app that looks like it was about a less than $10 million investment compared to now the U.S. saying it's going to take $1 trillion to accomplish the same thing. If that's not a wake-up call to the United States, I don't know what else is.
All right, guys, I can't believe the pace just doesn't stop. But wow, do we have a lot to break down. Last night, Scott Bessent was confirmed as the Treasury Secretary. There we go. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. Steve Daines is coming up right now. He's the senator from Montana. RFK Jr. is going to have his hearing in front of the Senate Finance Committee. I want to know where things stand. What is Pharma doing to push back? What is Big Food doing to push back? Where does his confirmation stand? Republicans, Democrats, plus Steve Daines really understands AI and China, and I'm going to ask him about what's going down in that debate. So keep that in mind. Overnight, President Trump, by the way, announcing a freeze of all federal aids, grants, loans, and the left is melting down. I mean, guys, look at this. We are $36 trillion in debt, a few trillion every year deficit spending. And the president wants to put pause and just say, hey, what's going on? And everyone wigs out. Oh, my God. I'm glad. No more business as usual. No more runaway spending. I love this. And other good news, by the way, guess who's gone? Jim Acosta out at CNN. Bye-bye, Jimmy. But, so sometimes you just, anyway, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to dance on his grave. But some new portraits is out. Melania Trump, our first lady, brand new portrait of her out that was taken on Inauguration Day. It is stunning. It says to me, I mean business, elegant, powerful. I love this. I mean, and you can see the Washington Monument behind her right there. I know that window, and I love it. It speaks so well. Also out with a brand new portrait, our Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, another one of these. I look like I'm going to make some going to get some stuff done. They're very powerful, I think, each of them in their own separate ways. By the way, speaking of meltdowns, Selena Gomez, the singer and I guess now actress. I guess she always was an actress. She's a Disney star. But all right. So I want to play you this video because it went viral yesterday and she ended up taking it down on Instagram. But I want to play it to you and give you a take that I don't think anyone else is giving you. Take a look. Go.
I just want to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked. The children. They don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
Okay. I'm writing this down. She's sorry. Okay. I don't know what for what, but she's sorry because her people are being attacked. Then she said just children. I don't know what that means. She just threw it out there. Children. She doesn't know what she can do. Okay. So I immediately, and now I feel bad. I want to be clear. I'm not trying to make fun of her. I just honestly was like, oh my God, when I see someone hurting, I think to myself, why are they hurting? What, can I do something? I hope that I don't like it when people are suffering or in pain or whatever. So I was like, what is going on? Who are her people? What's going on? Well, I went to Wikipedia. Sorry, I don't like Wikipedia, but I went to it because I was like, oh my gosh, where is she from that her people are hurting? This is what it says. Selena Marie Gomez was born July 22nd, 1992 in Grand Prairie, Texas, to a Texas-born former stage actress, Mandy Teefey. She was named after Selena Quintanilla, who died in 1985. Her father is of Mexican descent. Of her heritage, Gomez calls herself a, quote, proud third-generation American-Mexican. Okay, so let's just be clear. Her family's been in America for 3 generations. Who are her people that she's so concerned about? I'm being serious when I ask this. She's an American. Her parents are American. Her grandparents are American. Her people, is that the Colombians or the Guatemalans that are being deported because they're criminals in this country? What could she do for them? I'm sorry. Is she sympathizing with criminals? Did she cry for Lake and Riley? And again, I'm not trying to be mean about this, but I'm being honest. What are we getting upset about? The fact that criminals who entered this country illegally and then committed another crime are being sent back? You should be applauding this. What are you crying about? I don't get it. Her people, she's Texan. Her parents are Texans. Her grandparents are, I don't know, I assume they're Texan, maybe not. Anyway, it's unbelievable. But this is getting out of control. The left doesn't know how to melt down anymore. And this is their way to do it. By the way, speaking of deportations, Kristi Noem, the new DHS secretary, she was in New York City last night. Total badass. I mean, there's no other way of saying this. She was participating in immigration raids. I mean, Alejandro Mayorkas, this is how you actually do the job. What a sea change, by the way. Remember the CBP, the Customs and Border Patrol the mounted unit, they got falsely maligned by Biden for rounding up people, and the investigation proved that they were just doing their job. And now these guys from ICE and CBP can actually go out and do what they were trained to do, why they signed up. What a sea change. Unbelievable. I just love seeing this, enforcing the law. Wow. Can you imagine that? By the way, I think I mentioned this before yesterday, but brand new content coming out. My newsletter drops every Tuesday and Friday, SeanSpicer.com. It's free to sign up. Always love a VIP membership. Tomorrow, by the way, we do have pardoned January 6th defendant Enrique Tarrio. He will be here. I want to ask him about January 6th. What does he think of the pardon? What was his role? How did he feel about the prosecutions, whatever? But you're going to want to see this. President Trump will sign that Lake and Riley bill, by the way, on later today, or tomorrow, rather, on Wednesday at the White House, which will be the first piece of legislation that happens, that he signs. By the way, before I bring in Senator Steve Daines, who's going to be questioning RFK to give us some insight into what is Big Pharma, what is Big Food doing, there was this massive meltdown yesterday on the market, and I'm going to ask Steve Daines about this as well. China unveiled this new AI app called DeepSeek, and apparently it only costs $10 million, and it blows the doors off of everything that we've got right now. And all of our stuff has apparently cost hundreds of $millions. But here's the thing, and I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, like, maybe China's bluffing a little, but the bottom line is we got to get our act together as a country. China's now downloading an app, and we're giving them all of our information again. Are you guys kidding me? This is insane. It's the #1 app downloaded in the App Store yesterday. It's crazy. And, oh, by the way, that's the national security pieces. The other thing I'm concerned about is how did these guys do it without us seeing it? They dropped it in the App Store. Where's the intelligence community? Where were they? They didn't see this thing happening? Also, how is it that it costs us hundreds of millions of dollars to do something and then 10 million? We got to get our act together, folks. We got to get our priorities straight, because this is not good. This is not good. All right. Before I bring in Senator Steve Daines to talk about this RFK hearing and what's going on with China, I want to tell you guys, if you are the owner of a business or in charge of the finances, you need one of these Ramp cards. It's just like a Visa card. In fact, it says Visa on one side, Ramp on the other. It's an unbelievable game changer if you run a business or are the person in charge of it. Whether you got 5 or 5,000 employees, I'm telling you, it'll save you so much time and money chasing down expense reports, receipts, all that kind of stuff. This will give you tremendous insight into your company's spending. You're able to issue cards to employees, automate expenses. It's a total game changer for you and your employees. It's easy to use and to get started. It takes about 15 minutes. They issue virtual and physical cards so that you can set limits on what your employees can spend and how quickly they can get going. And check this out. Right now, you can get $250 in your pocket just by joining Ramp. Go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer, and get started with Ramp. It will be a total game changer for your company. By the way, just as a reminder, cards issued by Sutton and Celtic Bank, members FDIC, terms and conditions apply. I don't know about you when you start your morning, but if you're looking to get going good in the morning and feel good about it, then try Wire to Fish. Check out this bag here. This is the one I used over Christmas, but I brought it home with me. I did a pot, actually probably a couple pots every morning for the entire family and got rave reviews. Here's the cool thing about Wired to Fish. It is great coffee. The beans come from Guatemala. They are Arabica beans. It tastes amazing. But what I love even better is that when everyone's sitting back telling me what a great cup of coffee it is, I know it's consistent with my values. Wired to Fish gives back 25% of their profits to faith-based initiatives, clean water initiatives, stuff that I am cool with. I don't want to go to Starbucks or anywhere else knowing that all that money is going to support woke DEI policies. Wired to Fish is amazing coffee that is consistent with my values. And you can start your day right by ordering a customized Sean Spicer Show Wired to Fish coffee Yeti tumbler. You will literally get a Wired to Fish Sean Spicer Show Yeti delivered to you with your first order. So give this brand a try. Go to wired, the number 2 fish coffee.com. So it's wired, the numeral 2 fish coffee.com. And you will save 10% off your first order if you use the code WeCare. Make 2025 the year that you aligned your coffee with your values. Wired to fishcoffee.com. Check it out. All right. I want to introduce the senator from Montana who sits on the Finance, Foreign Relations, Energy, and National Resources Committee, the gentleman from Montana, Senator Steve Daines. Hey, Senator, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be with you, Sean.
So, by the way, I got to tell you, I was doing the morning meeting every morning with Mark Halpert. We do it 9 live here on my YouTube channel. And a gentleman by the name of Jim Howard, he's a superintendent out in Montana, was talking about education with us. And he said, oh, Senator Daines knows all about the challenges of rural education and getting kids out of the classroom. So just thought I'd let you know that that was my Montana connection of the day.
Hey, I love it. Well, Jim Howard's father, also named Jim Howard, is a wonderful man. He's in his mid-80s, and we attend church with him on Sundays out in Montana, in fact. Great family.
Okay. Well, know that he has your back when it comes to your efforts on supporting reform in rural education and what's being able to, the Department of Education. Anyway, big issue for you this week, for a lot of us anyway, is RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing coming before the Senate Finance Committee. Give us a lay of the land. Where does it stand? How many Republican votes are on the committee? How many Democrats? And where do you think this thing breaks down right now?
Yeah. Well, let me step back at the 30,000-foot view. As you know, Sean, the number of Republicans that we could possibly lose is 3 and still get in through, like what happened with Pete Hegseth. With J.D. Vance breaking the tie, that's exactly what happened last week. We lost 3 Republicans, 50-50. J.D. Vance comes down and breaks that.
But that's on the floor, right?
That's on the floor, but I start there. But we don't have a floor vote, of course, until we get out of the committee. So at the committee level, I feel good that we will get RFK Jr. out of the committee. I think we'll have a good hearing. I'm looking forward to talking. He's a very, very thoughtful leader, Sean. He came by and visited me when I was doing part of my advising consent as a U.S. Senator. We had a long conversation. I was very pleased to hear he spent a lot of time in Montana. He knows our state very well. He's been out there oftentimes enjoying the beauty that Montana has to offer. But one thing I found about RFK Jr., Sean, I think he's been maligned by the press as being somebody who doesn't listen. He listens really well. I found he was, a sponge, taking in what I had to tell him about what are the important issues in Montana on agriculture as an example. And I really enjoyed my interaction with him, and I think he'll have a good hearing. Obviously, he's going to get carpet bombed by the Democrats. That's what happens. We saw that with Hegseth, but we got Pete through committee. I think we'll get RFK Jr. through the committee as well.
Is there something ironic that a bunch of Republicans are about to confirm, or at least try to confirm, a Kennedy, and it's the Democrats that are in opposition to him?
Well, I mean, you can't make it up, Sean. Look at the coalition that President Trump put together in this last election. And it's been a wonderful thing. You hear Republicans talk about expanding the tent. President Trump has actually done it. And it hasn't been through political calculations and with a bunch of high-priced consultants and cigar smoke-filled rooms figuring out some kind of brilliant strategy to expand the appeal of President Trump. It's just who President Trump is. And I think it's been refreshing to the American people. And it is ironic to think that pretty good odds there's going to be a Kennedy serving in a Republican administration.
So explain to us like what the opposition is like. Is it just, hey, we're against him because he's Trump? Is it the anti-vax line? Is it the medical community, the big food, big pharma? What are the forces against RFK right now like?
Yeah, well, I think you hit on a few of them there. And remember that there's an old saying, old proverb, a big tree collects wind. When you have somebody who has a remarkable background, who's been involved in just living life as well as been involved in policy, in business, in government affairs over the years, you can find one or two things on anybody. If you want to try to sink a nominee, you can find one or two things about anybody on any particular topic that probably would give you some argument to try to stop a nominee coming through the United States Senate. But I think we step back. What I found with RFK Jr., that first and foremost, there was the whole vaccine question.
Right.
When I talk to him about that, I think he's very thoughtful. I think he's also very data driven. I think he'll stop the fear mongers out, but no matter where a person stands on vaccines, I think you'll find somebody that's very data driven and will do what he thinks is best in terms of policy to protect the American people. On things like diet and so forth, again, he's somebody who's going to look at the science and make sure that he's doing what within his powers to make America healthy again. And God knows we need some of that. But I'd say something else that I found in my discussions with him. I asked him about the issues of life and abortion. I was very direct with him. And I said, have you looked at the FDA's own data on chemical pill abortion? I said, have you looked at it? And I showed him the data. He goes, that's remarkable that even the FDA's data says about 4% of women end up in the emergency room as a result of taking that pill. And so we weren't having a discussion with RFK about whether abortion is right or wrong at that moment. We were having a discussion about the health and safety of a pill that's been approved by the FDA. And he says, I want to look at that in greater detail. Again, he's data driven. I think that ought to give all of us comfort. That's exactly the kind of person you want heading HHS.
Speaking of data driven, one of the things that really kind of piqued my interest last week is for 6-7 months, and I will admit that I'm a new convert to this, right? Over the last 7 or 8 months, suddenly someone starts saying, did you realize that these ultra processed foods are really bad for you? Did you realize that these forever plastics are really bad for you? We should start taking them out of our kitchens, the black tongs and spatulas, etc. And then last week, I think it was, the FDA comes out and says, hey, we're banning red dye 3. Well, we've known red dye 3 was bad for us for years. They banned it in Europe. They've banned it in cosmetics. And suddenly it happened. And I don't think that would have happened without Kennedy and this MAHA movement. And I guess the broader question that I'm asking you as a lawmaker and a policymaker is, does it give you pause that suddenly, after all this attention, the FDA just says, oh, yeah, you're right. It's a carcinogen. It's bad for you. But we've been letting it in your Gatorade, your Pop-Tarts, all this other stuff for the longest time.
Well, when you are leading the FDA or somebody who's working in the FDA, first and foremost, you want to be driven by the science and data and not by politics. As we know, Sean, a town like DC and federal agencies, there's a lot of politics involved in all these agencies. Sean, I'm a chemical engineer by degree. I think I'm the only chemical engineer in the United States Senate. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a science guy. I'm a data guy. And so this is a moment where you set aside politics, set aside even personal opinion, and first and foremost, look at what is the objective, peer-reviewed science say. Because we all know with the internet and social media, a lot of crap can be spread, lies can be spread very quickly, and some people believe it to be truth, even though it is devoid of really objective truth, peer-reviewed data. This is where RFK Jr. can step in and really be, a guardian of what is true, what do the facts say. Let's all keep open minds, because I'm like you, Sean. I mean, I have some preconceived notions and prejudices, but I'm always open for somebody to convince me otherwise with the data. I think that's where you'll see RFK Jr. park. He'll be data-driven, peer-review driven, truth-driven.
You and I would get along well, because sometimes I'll get in the car and I put on Waze and I think I know the best route to get somewhere. And I always say the data doesn't lie, right? So if it tells you to take a right and then a left, it's agnostic. The data just tells you the best route or the best thing. It doesn't care what your philosophy is. So I'm with you every time you say that. It perks my ears up. But I got to ask you, explain to people who don't understand this, What is the pressure like from, I mean, I keep hearing about war rooms being built up to go against RFK. Is Big Pharma, are the lobbyists from Big Food, Big Pharma coming into your office and Senator Daines, listen, this guy's dangerous. Here's all the things that he's bad. And here's some doctors. Is that effort like in coming into your office where they're trying to talk to you, your staff, and saying, warning you about RFK?
No, I mean, we've had discussions with various groups. I mean, on my daily routine and my daily schedule, there's always multiple individuals who have an opinion about any particular issue. That's what you do as a U.S. senator. You got to sort through all of that and ultimately come down to what you think is the right decision. And remember, who do you represent? For me, Sean, I represent 1.1 million Montanans. It's what is the right thing for the people of Montana. And that's why I'll be, things I've been probing RFK Jr. with some of the ag policies, very important. Looking at issues of pesticides and so forth as I talk to my ranchers and my farmers. But again, what I find is that if somebody comes into my office and presenting a case in terms of a concern about maybe some position RFK Jr. has taken in the past, look, I want to listen. I want to look at the data. I want to find out, is this objective, peer-reviewed data that is true? If it is, I'm going to take that into consideration. But that's why I look at no matter who I speak with, that's always where I start. What does the data say? Is this are you just defending some multi-billion-dollar industry? Or are you really looking at the data, what's best for your consumer and for the people of Montana and for the United States?
Right. And fair enough. And I appreciate your approach to that. I guess what I'm asking is, if somebody is sitting out there, whether it's in Montana or California, and they're reading these stories about war rooms being put up to go after somebody, just to give them some insight.
Yeah.
Is this the kind of thing? I get it. You're doing your job. I just want to make sure people understand the process. Are these people coming in and saying, hey, here's 10 studies, you need to read these because they show that he's off the rails on these 5 subjects? How cutthroat is what's happening now, or is this an overblown media story?
Yeah, I think it depends, Sean, on each senator. I think those who know me know that I won't put up with a bunch of baloney coming into my office. If they come in and present their case, it better be true. I'm not going to be reacting to some social media effort that some outside interest could prop up 1 million people to bombard your office with phone calls or posts and so forth. And I think I'm not feeling that pressure personally. It's not to suggest there aren't other senators, but they know we kind of have a no-nonsense zone here in this office. and so I'm not feeling it. It's not like cigar-filled war rooms here, people storming the office right now on RFK Jr. Yes, individuals have weighed in on this, but that's true of any nominee. But I got to believe that maybe other senators that may be a little more susceptible to it could be a little different story.
Yeah, no. Bill Riley's got a no-spin zone. You have a no-nonsense zone. I get it. So you mentioned your farmers and pesticides and stuff. Again, this is another issue that I don't know. I've always just believed, hey, if it's in the supermarket or it's on my plate and the government said it's okay, it's okay. What do we need to know as consumers about pesticides? I started to read this thing, and I'm going to mispronounce it, but glyphosate. Yeah. So should we be concerned about these things? Is our food safe? What do farmers actually want?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And glyphosate will be a topic of discussion. Very, very important to look at what the data says on glyphosate. Now, I'm not going to geek out here, put on my chemical engineering hat for a moment here, Sean, but
geek out.
Well, it's really, really important that the data is looked at in terms of food safety and these pesticides that, let's keep in mind, without them, we start losing yields of 20 to 30% in the ag economy. That would be devastating to the food supply. Now, obviously, if it wasn't safe, we'll have a different discussion. But I will tell you on glyphosate, on all the peer-reviewed, solid data, independent agencies, universities, others who have looked at this have said this is a safe way to kill weeds, basically, is what we're talking about. But there's one European outlier on all this, Sean, that has been the trial attorney's dream, where they file lawsuits on this. But it is an outlier from where I think objective truth is on this particular topic. So again, that's one example of where you have trial lawyers who are ambulance chasers winning huge settlements when the science does not support the arguments being made in front of juries.
All right, let me just ask one follow-up on this, because I think what we're seeing more and more, at least I am, is that I'm with you. Like I've always said, oh, well, the science says this. And more people are saying, look at who paid for that. Look at the fact that Big Pharma, Big Food paid for that study. No wonder that the science and the data, because of who funded it. Does that concern you as a data guy?
It can, but that's where you just don't take one point necessarily. I'm also an active, we hunt in Montana, Shawnee. I grew up like generation in Montana. When you're sighting at a rifle, what do? You put 3 shots on a target at 100 yards. You don't just rely on one shot. You fire 3 shots. Why? Because then you really see where that rifle's at. You have an errant shot. Same thing's true on data. You better have 3 or so at least studies before you come to a conclusion, because you're right. Yeah, you could be influenced by the funding of a study by some particular industry. Let's look at usually the aggregate sum of the data to make a conclusion.
All right, Senator, there's one thing I want to touch on before we wrap. You spent a lot of time in China. Broadly speaking, how is this approach that we're dealing with China? Are the tariffs effective? What happened yesterday with this AI thing, I still don't completely understand. But I feel like we're literally trying to ban TikTok. At the same time, they're sending over an AI app that becomes the most downloaded thing, and we're handing over even more information. As a guy who's business oriented, that's data based, that's spent time in China, how concerned are you about the threat that we face from China?
It's a great question, Sean, and it requires, I think, a thoughtful response. Let me say this first and foremost. The most important thing we can do as relates to China is making sure that America is going faster. The genie is so far out of the bottle in China as relates to their innovation ecosystem. That DeepSeek new AI open source app that was the #1 downloadable app on Apple yesterday, that caused the largest drop in market cap history on the equity markets yesterday, when NVIDIA stock dropped over $500 billion in market cap, never before seen, by an app that looks like it was about a less than $10 million investment, compared to now the U.S. saying it's going to take $1 trillion to accomplish the same thing. If that's not a wake-up call to the United States, I don't know what else is. And what it tells me, by the way, on that OpenSeek app, the company is based in Hangzhou. It's south of Shanghai. It's the same city where Jack Ma and Alibaba company started up. It's another one of these pockets of innovation within China. Remember, they're graduating about 10 times more engineers every year than the United States is. So this is not only a short-term issue for us, a long-term problem in terms of the scale and the quality of innovation now coming out of China. So what do we do about that? Well, first and foremost, we better look inside our country first to make sure we have tax policies, regulatory policies, education policies that are producing the best and brightest, retaining them here, and encouraging innovation. Because if somebody believes in free markets, it's the free markets that are going to solve this problem, Sean. The government's not going to come in here and save us what's going on in China. In fact, usually when the government steps in, it usually slows us down. So answer number one, we must go faster in America. That's why this fight on the tax policy, making these tax cuts permanent that President Trump put in place in 2017, so important to make sure that we keep American innovation leading here is our highest priority. But second, when you think about China, look, it's the second largest economy in the world. There's not even a close third place. It's the United States at about $18 trillion GDP, China about 14, 15 trillion GDP. Then the bronze medal goes to Japan at about $4 trillion GDP. So it's like a gold medalist and a silver medalist, and then everybody else. It's the second largest economy. They now have a military complex, a superpower that will start to rival the rest of the world. The Russians were always our fight as you and I were growing up in terms of the Cold War. Now it's going to be the sophistication of China, their nuclear capabilities. So we've got an economic threat, a military threat. This is why it's really important President Trump's in office. His peace through strength, reopening the conversation with Xi Jinping, very important. I stay in close contact. David Perdue is going to be the next U.S. ambassador to China. David and I worked together on the phase 1 trade deal for President Trump in Beijing in 2019, negotiating with Liu He in Beijing. First President Trump made a great choice in David Perdue to be a business guy. He was in Hong Kong, Sean, with American business when I was in Guangzhou with Procter & Gamble at the same time back in the 90s. We're the two business guys who believe in America first, the strength of America, but understand the nuance of China. We have to navigate through this this minefield is going to require wisdom and strength. And I'm grateful President Trump's our commander-in-chief right now to help us through that.
Well, I'm grateful for your wisdom and your leadership on this issue. And I've always been worried that the right people didn't get it. Man, you just ran circles around everything that I knew and thought. Senator Dave Daines, thanks for joining us. And God bless you for what you're doing, because we need your kind of leadership in the United States Senate.
Thanks, Sean.
You bet. Wow, that was an interesting interview with Steve Daines. Unbelievable. I'm looking forward to those hearings. Coming up next, I'm going to bring you a really interesting perspective. I mean, obviously, I was the press secretary. What was it like to be on the flip side of that through this first weekend? Rob Crilly is the chief U.S. political correspondent for the Daily Mail. He was with President Trump writing the pool reports all weekend. We're going to get his perspective. Before we bring him in, though, I want to tell you, I know a lot of you have a fire extinguisher, first aid kit in your house. One of the things that you need is this. This is a life vac. It can save your life or somebody that you know in the event of a choking incident. Now, here's the thing that's so interesting. One of the viewers of this show actually saved a life because they ordered LifeVac on the show. I got a call from the company last week. This is the thing. LifeVac can make any person a hero in the event of a choking incident. It's so easy to use. You keep it next to your fire extinguisher or somewhere where everyone knows. That's why police departments, fire departments, EMS, restaurants, cruise lines, everybody's getting a LifeVac. Schools. And by the way, if you want one for your kid's school and they don't have one, then get it free. We're going to lifevac.net. Go to lifevac.net. You should get one too, because your life or someone else's life could depend on it. Someone's life was actually saved who's ordered it. Make sure you're the hero in your family and your friend group by having a LifeVac, lifevac.net. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in the chief U.S. political correspondent for the Daily Mail, Rob Crilly. Rob, good to see you. Tell me what it was. I mean, I kept reading. I get the pool reports, right? Which just describe what that is.
So the president has a small pool of reporters traveling with him. Obviously, the whole White House press corps can't get into all of his events. So he has a handful with him. And it was my job as the print pooler to write up every interaction, every movement, and send my reports out to thousands of journalists waiting to hear what he was up to.
So you write this report and say, what do you put in those reports? And then who do you send it to and where does it go?
So some of them are quite dull. The motorcade departed the airport at 11:02. We arrived at the venue for the speech at 11:05, things like that. And then I write up an email. I send it into the White House Correspondents Association. They have a mailing list of all their members. So it goes out to thousands of people, obviously a large contingent in Washington, but it can go all around the world. I have Indian journalists sometimes emailing me saying what was going on, what did he say about Prime Minister Modi. So some of the pool reports are a bit dull. With this president, of course, there's always something interesting going on. So take Friday, for example, my first day traveling with him. It was his first domestic trip. We turn up at Joint Base Andrews. We get on the plane with him.
What time is that? What time did you arrive?
So our call time, I think, was about 8:30. And our departure was at around about 10 o'clock. So he comes out of the White House, he stands on the South Lawn, he talks to the in-town journalists, the in-town pool, and all the reporters gathered there with Marine One. You remember Chopper Talk from first time around? He talks to the reporters there, answers a few questions, gets into Marine One, flies to Joint Base Andrews. He gets out of the helicopter, walks across the tarmac. We're waiting under the wing to see what he's going to do, if he's going to come over and talk to us. He didn't on this occasion. He was straight up the steps, the big steps. Remember how President Biden used the small steps into the belly of the plane? That was
Big
quite a
steps
clear
are
message.
back, baby.
The big steps are back. So he walks up the plane. We then have to hustle up the steps at the back of the plane into the press cabin at the back of the plane. And then we take off. And
How many people are in that? How many people are in that press cabin with you?
So I think it's 13 journalists plus one press assistant from the White House, a wrangler, as they're known, and it was her job, Olivia. It was her first trip as well, new crew at the White House. It's her job to keep us on time, in the right place, make sure we don't get into trouble. So we took off. It was a short hop, maybe an hour and a half, just about enough time for breakfast. And then we landed in Asheville.
So there's a food service, by the way. You gotta...
There is a food service, and I can tell you about the wine service if we get all the way through to dinner. But that's later in the trip. And we landed in Asheville, North Carolina, as you remember, badly hit by Hurricane Helene. And one of the signs that this is a different administration is we've landed. Air Force One has come to a halt. The reporters, we scurry out the back. We stand under the wing again, waiting for POTUS, President of the United States, to come down the steps. And he comes down, and I'm ready to send my pool report saying, POTUS came down the steps, got into the motorcade. But then, of course, he turns and he walks straight for the press pool, and he comes over and talks to us and starts answering our questions. And at that point, he's there to talk about the disaster recovery in North Carolina. And then we're on to California for the wildfires. But at this point, you can throw anything at him. So I shouted a question about the deportation flights. We'd just seen the photographs of military planes being filled up with illegal immigrants being sent home. There was a question lobbed about TikTok, and he maybe chatted to us 3, 4, 5 minutes, answering a bunch of questions before he then goes back to the motorcade, and he's driven. Funny enough, it's only about 100 yards across the apron there. While we journalists have to run, we have a wrangler shouting at us, "Get in position, go, go, go." And Trump drives over, gets out of the car, and he greets 100 or so supporters who've come out to see him. So again, my job is to say, to write to quickly, and I'm an older guy, I'm Gen X, I'm not great on the phone, but you're desperately trying to write this email as quickly as you can about what President Trump said to his fans, what they shouted. Melania, of course, was there as well, and someone shouted, "Melania, you're beautiful," and you're writing all of this down about their interaction. So that's only the first couple of hours of the trip. This was a 4-day trip. So we were we were flat out from start to finish.
So when you get to California, to fast forward for a second,
yeah,
you land. Were you guys shocked that Gavin Newsom was there?
Well, he had posted, I think, on social media that this was his plan. It had been reported he was planning to do it. And actually, before we landed, your successor, the new press secretary, Caroline Levitt, had come back to talk to us. And I had asked her, how is this going to go if Gavin Newsom is on the timer? Now, she said they weren't aware he was going to be there. So when we got off the plane and saw him standing there, kicking his heels, waiting for Trump to emerge, we licked our lips. This was going to be quite the confrontation. It was only a couple of weeks ago, Trump had called for his resignation. But there was a super interesting power play then unfolded. We're standing there. There's no sign of Trump. He left Gavin Newsom waiting on the tarmac. But I don't know what it was. I didn't have a watch on it, but 7 or 8 minutes. So Gavin Newsom is rocking back and forth on his heels. Then Trump does come down, and the greeting was reasonably warm. There was a shake of the hands, a smile. Trump leaned in and sort of put his hand on his back, clapped him. But you know what? That interaction just lasted a little bit too long to be natural and genuine. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So that was a super interesting moment on the trip.
Okay, so what I thought was interesting is it's Friday night, and I'm reading the pool reports. And I get one, and you'll know, I apologize because I don't have it in front of me, but it was like, you're on the West Coast in LA, but 3 hours earlier on the East Coast, I'm doing the math, and it was like, they called a lid. So explain what that is, but it was like the equivalent of 11:30 at night on a Friday night.
Yeah. So our job is to cover all of President Trump's appearances. And at a certain point in the day, the White House press office will tell you, that's it, he's finished. Whether he's just kind of settling in for private meetings, or if he's traveling, he's at his hotel, he's at his residence, he's going to bed. And they call it, the announcement is, we're calling a travel photo lid. So at that point, there'll be no more travel, no more photo opportunities, no more sight of him. So that was, we'd gone actually from California. We'd actually flown to Las Vegas, Nevada by this point.
Is that when the dinner service was?
That's when the dinner service was. And you will, I mean, you will know this. The president is a creature of habit, and he doesn't like to be away from home. So the reason we'd made the hop was so that he could stay in the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, where of course he feels more comfortable. And we had an event there the next day, but it wasn't until lunchtime. It could easily have been scheduled so that he didn't have to do much. So anyway, so we had started off at 9 in the morning or something. We flew to North Carolina, then to California, then to Nevada. And by the time we were finished, I forget the time. It was maybe, it was certainly past midnight Eastern time. And that had been a long, long day with a lot of interactions with the president.
So how different is this from Biden, say? I mean, just in terms of the accessibility, the timing, like I can't recall the last time President Biden did anything past, 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to be a non-partisan observer, which is the way that I think journalists like me should be. And I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way. But what I want to say is as a journalist, what I want is access and stories. And the difference now is really night and day. I traveled a lot with Biden, and he never once, for example, came back to the press cabin to speak. I think he did it on 2 occasions, maybe once coming back from Tel Aviv, you remember that trip? And I think maybe there was another one. Trump with us in his first trip, 4 days, he did it twice. He did it on Saturday afternoon, and he did it again last night. And last night was a nightmare because we were on our approach to Joint Base Andrews, and he came back and answered a bunch of questions for about 8 minutes. And my job as the print pooler, we have no Wi-Fi or anything, is to get my tape recorder and transcribe it as fast as I can. Now that's fine if you've got an hour and a half left in the flight. I had about 5 minutes. So I mean, I'm making it sound like a problem. It's not. So the accessibility is completely different. We
Can
may
I ask
not
just a tie, like, and I mean this in all seriousness. Like when I was reading your pool reports from the weekend, I was tired reading them. I was like, are you guys exhausted with the back and forth comparatively? I mean, because that's a lot of up and down stairs running around. Like, do your colleagues go, I don't know how we're going to do this, Rob?
Yes. In a word, yes. I mean, let's be honest, I'm on the older side of the people who pool. And there's been a big switch over in personnel. And I've noticed there's a new younger crew. But I think all of us, by the end of 4 days, were absolutely exhausted. There's running up and down escalators. There's running up and down stairs. You can't keep the president waiting. So you have to be there first. You have to get to the plane while he's getting out of the motorcade. There's a lot of running around, but it's the mental side of things. It's like he will come back and speak to you for 5 minutes and then say, right, any questions? And I could see an awkward moment at the start of one of our interactions where he's being asked about what's it like being back on the plane? How is it being? And he would look around as if to say, what the hell? I'm the commander in chief. Let's get real with these questions. So you've got to be on it. You've got to be ready to ask about the latest tensions with North Korea. You've got to be up to speed with who's in negotiations with TikTok. You've got to be knowing what his plans are on tariffs. Because, I remember a couple of years ago, him embarrassing a Bloomberg journalist. Bloomberg is all about business. And he was asked a question about oil prices. And Trump shot back, well, do you know what the price of a barrel of Brent crude is? And the journalist didn't. So it's not just the physical side of things. You've got to have it up here as well.
Yeah. Well, I said this after the election. Buckle up, baby, because I think this is going to be a heck of a 4 years. But I appreciate the fact that he's brought transparency and access back. Rob Crilly, thank you for everything you're doing to keep us informed as to what's happening. I appreciate you sharing that with us and breaking it all down. Hopefully you'll come back soon.
Love to. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Listen, we have another great show lined up tomorrow and the rest of the week, breaking down these first few days of the Trump administration. Tomorrow, by the way, January 6th defendant Enrique Tarrio. You might remember him. He got a pardon from Trump. He's going to explain to us his role on January 6th, what he thinks about the pardon. And we've got a great conversation about DEI on Friday coming up. The panel always on Thursday. Remember, my content on my newsletter drops today, SeanSpicer.com. A lot of behind the scenes stuff that is coming out right now, an analysis of the first thing. So always subscribe to that. SeanSpicer.com. VIP memberships are always welcome. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.